very good evening and welcome to The Big Picture. I'm Tracy Shilji. Now today our focus is on Pakistan. The country for the first time has acknowledged that Mumbai attack mastermind Hafiz Saeed's outfit, the Jamaat-ud-Dawa, was a wing of the Lashkar-e-Toiba and has now banned media coverage of both the outfit and the Falah-e-Insaniyat Foundation under the UN restriction. In fact, the Pakistan Electronic Media Regulatory Authority, or the PEMRA, has issued a notification banning all satellite TV channels and FM radio from covering of 60 organizations, of 60 organizations, and 12 others have been placed under a watch list. So how should we view this crackdown? How is India viewing it? And is it actually enough? To discuss this, we have in studio Mr. Alok Bansal, who is the Director of India Foundation. We also have former Special Secretary of RAW, Rana Banerjee, here with us. We've got ITV's London Bureau Chief, Sanjay Jha, as well, joining us in studio. And also BJP's National Spokesperson, Gopal Krishna Agarwal. And we also have retired Professor Uma Singh from the Center for South, Central, Southeast Asia and Southwest Pacific Studies at the School of International Studies. In fact, if I could come to you, Mr. Banerjee, first, this ban that we're talking about, it's just on the media, on the coverage, actually, not particularly on the groups. So a lot of people are, of course, critical of this ban, saying what's the point of it all?
It's a step, an additional step, one can say, which we will need to watch how effectively it is implemented. But it is obviously a sequel to the recent joint resolution that was undertaken when Mr. Nawaz Sharif visited USA, and the joint resolution with President Obama, where a commitment was given by him to fulfill the obligations to ban or to take action against the banned outfits under UN Resolution 1267. On which, you see, Pakistan has in the past been dragging its feet, particularly in the context of Lashkar-e-Toiba and also Jamaat-ud-Dawa. Now, the Jamaat-ud-Dawa spokesperson today has reacted to say that this has been done under US pressure to please India. And also an Interior Ministry spokesperson has said that we didn't want the Jamaat-ud-Dawa to be included. So we will have to take this whole thing with a pinch of salt and see, like in the past, whether the Pakistanis are only paying lip service to it or they actually mean to implement the ban.
All right. If I could go to Mr. Agarwal, how is the Indian government viewing this, Mr. Agarwal?
Actually, we want a dialogue with Pakistan, and any step in that direction is welcome. But seeing the history of Pakistan, it has always been very difficult to have faith on what they take on the ground and how they will react on various issues. Because if you go, whether it is from the earlier examples of NSA level talk or going back on UFA, signing joint agreement, then going back on the issues and sabotaging the talks and moving further, they do have pressures sometimes. Under US pressure, they do take some steps, but ultimately we have to take it with the pinch of salt that whether they will do. The ground reality, if they have not, whether long-standing demand of releasing the Naqvi or going on into other counter-terrorism outfits in their place, but they are doing cross-border firing also is going on. So this is continuous provocation, and we understand that it is more, they take terrorism as a state alternative to diplomacy in their country. And there are multiple forces, even ISI, then military, they all take, because of that counter positions is being taken, and the democratic forces or the elected government is not that strong that it can control those disruptive forces inside the Pakistan.
Mr. Bansal, we are, of course, talking about how perhaps this is US pressure that we are talking about, that Pakistan is acting out on. Mr. Agarwal, of course, pointing out the fact, how the army and the ISI, of course, has control over the government, the civilian government there. And just recently, we did see, of course, a former Pakistani president. We got, General Pervez Musharraf himself coming out and saying that in the 90s, we were the ones who started this entire wave. And, Hafiz Saeed, for one, including Osama as well, were hailed as heroes. Is this kind of a damage control that we're seeing from the Nawaz Sharif government?
I think Nawaz Sharif government is trying to fulfill its obligations under pressure from United States. Whether this would be effective, we have to wait and watch. But what we must understand that Pakistan has undergone another earthquake. And one of the biggest strengths of these organizations have been the relief work that they used to take up in these remote areas. And in fact, they invariably would come out better than the government agencies, and people would get drawn to these organizations. Now, if media does not cover this relief work, then that would be, to my mind, a big blow for these organizations, because they thrived on the so-called charitable work which they used to undertake in these areas. And this has been one of their USP, saying that we are the first to reach there and we are the ones who really provide succor to the affected masses and things like that. Now, if media ban is implemented in all earnestness and the media does not cover these activities of these organizations, then it would definitely have an impact. But it is too early to say, because as Mr. Banerjee said, the Interior Ministry is making some statement, the government is making some statement, the organizations themselves are reacting in a different case. But even more significant is that Pakistan, these organizations have a history of metamorphing into another organization. To give you an example, Sepahe Sahiba, Pakistan was banned, it became some other organization, it was again banned, it became Ahle Sunnat wal Jamaat. So, for all you know, Jamaatud Dawa could come out under some new incarnation tomorrow, and Pemera will say that this organization is not banned, so this can, its activities can be covered. So that possibility does exist. So I think at this juncture it may be too premature to jump to conclusions whether it will have an effect or it will not have an effect. I think the best thing would be to wait and watch. But there is no doubt that if this step is implemented, even though it is half-baked, it will have some impact on the drawing up of youth to these organizations will get restricted to some extent.
And Sanjay, if you could give us an idea, you know, you've obviously been doing reports from Pakistan as well. What do the moderates there say? What are the liberals saying? Are they actually seeing, you know, any kind of a change as far as a crackdown on, you know, extremism as such that Pakistan is claiming? Do they actually see that on the ground? Are they feeling there's a change there?
I think I will agree with Mr. Rana here, you know, Mr. Banerjee. At least there's some initiative has been taken place, you know, as Mr. Mansur said, you know, all the young guys, you know, they would get to them because they were involved with a lot of charity works around them, you know. So I think we should give credit, whether it's under the pressure from Americans or, you know, the Nawaz Sharif initiative, you know. So if they don't get limelight, if they don't get everyday television coverage, you know, relentless coverage, you know, of the rallies or Hafiz Saeed of the world, you know, that would certainly have some impact, you know. And obviously liberals and the moderates of Pakistan, they don't want these elements, you know, to be, you know, going around doing the propaganda of their own, you know, business.
Absolutely, absolutely. If I could bring in Mrs. Uma Singh, you know, ma'am, this is in fact for the first time that Pakistan has actually admitted that the GUD and the FIF are actually wings of the Lashkar-e-Toiba. That in itself, do you think it is significant?
Yeah, I fully agree that it is quite significant, because despite the fact that Musharraf had talked about it, but the thing is that for the first time the Pakistan Interior Minister, you know, he himself has issued instructions of the opinion worldwide that Pakistan is using terrorism as an instrument of state policy. And even though it is asking the private channels to ban the advertisements, but still it is quite a wake-up call for everybody in India, in Pakistan, and even in the international community. Because this just earlier they had gained a lot of sympathy that they do charitable work and they were the ones who did maximum work during the earthquakes. But I think that coming from Pakistan's Interior Minister, and here I would like to add a caveat, that despite the fact that, you know, this has happened, but still you find that Lashkar-e-Toiba is sending their own people to Indian part of Kashmir to avenge the killing of Abu Qasim. So that doesn't mean that it has deterred Lashkar-e-Toiba from pursuing their activities which they have been pursuing vis-a-vis India.
That's right.
So I would rather take a cynical view of that.
That's right. And, you know, that's exactly what the government is also saying. Mr. Agarwal, you know, these are, of course, some reports too that have been coming today that the Lashkar is going to be avenging the death of Abu Qasim. the Udhampur attack mastermind. How is the Indian government viewing that? And, how are they hoping that relations with Pakistan is going to move forward, if at all?
What we think is that the people of Pakistan, they want a better relations with India. And the rulers in the Pakistan, they are facing tremendous pressure under domestic economic problems. And to divert that, they take on these activities of anti-India rhetoric. This is a positive point where India can start that people-to-people dialogue can happen. And what Pakistan is doing at present, we are not very hopeful that it will, as a government, will take much thing on that, because only if the international pressure continues on it, then only it will be some kind of tamed on and will be further put into pressure to act on the terrorism. It is recently all out development, whether it was John Kerry had put pressure on Pakistan, that it was when he said to the president that you are not doing enough to control terrorism on your soil. Then Afghanistan also said something. India has been continuously saying. Even China had also told that Pakistan should do something or more on the terrorist front. So I think this is continuous pressure from the world community that alone will put Pakistan under pressure to do something. On its own, it is not going to do. This pressure has to continue on Pakistan from their own people. We can go on more people-to-people dialogue from the citizens of Pakistan. That is one thing, and go on international community to put pressure on Pakistan. Then only it is going to do anything. As far as our own preparedness on the anti-Pakistan Pakistan border front, we have to be well prepared. We have to give a strong message to Pakistan that India will not tolerate any kind of these kind of activity from the Pakistan side. That itself is sufficient to will put some pressure on Pakistan to act in a reasonable manner. Even now, the Chota Rajan issue also, we see that Dawood Ibrahim, they have put more security on this. They were earlier denying all these activities, but now they are under pressure to act, and this pressure should continue from all fronts. Then only we will see results.
All right. That's, of course, some assurance coming from the government. But Mr. Banerjee, talking about those warnings that have gone to Pakistan time again, has been pointed out by China as well. But it still continues to get substantial amount of aid in this fight against terror. A lot of critics are of the opinion that the US is a bit too soft on Pakistan, considering the fact that they have been time again being called as a state that harbors terror. But why is it? What is this relationship, and the dynamics of it, if you could make us understand that?
You see, this is a very complex problem. I think Mr. Agarwal has got it absolutely right as to the responses that are needed in this regard, and also the pressure from international powers. The US-Pakistan relationship has its own complexities. The USA needs Pakistan to project it as a moderate Islamic power in its overall interests in the region, both in the Middle East and also in the AFPAC region. Till the situation in Afghanistan stabilizes, it cannot jettison Pakistan. So, therefore, it cannot completely disconnect its aid or its relationship. And recently there has been improvement in the US-Pakistan relationship. Now there is this new strategic security dialogue that has been started. And of course, they have been exerting pressure that unless some concrete steps are taken to curb those who are being abetted on their soil to act as sort of state-aided sponsors both on the Indian and the Afghan front, the overall aid for military purposes from USA could be reduced. So this signal is given, but to what extent it is implemented, it varies from time to time, and we must not expect that America will completely, jettison Pakistan.
Absolutely, yes. But then, in a scenario where, you see the bonhomie that is between Prime Minister Modi and, US President Barack Obama. You're talking about increase in trade. You're talking in terms of, bilateral relations being at a high at this point of time. And, when the US still has that same kind of approach that it has with Pakistan, where does India stand at this point? I mean, is our relationship still as it was, or has it improved, as far as at least the Kashmir issue is concerned? US, of course, hasn't changed its stand yet. It's still calling it a thorny issue. It's, the POK issue and all that. Where does India stand in this, US, India, Pakistan, as far as terror is concerned?
Well, see, US had its own dynamics and its own relationship, as you rightly mentioned, that there is a great bonhomie between the Indian Prime Minister and the American President, Barack Obama. And America has to same time, maintain a different relationship with Pakistan because of its fight against the terror, as long as American troops are there in Afghanistan, And so Pakistan relationship with America has nothing to do with Indian relationship with America because we talk on different levels. The Indians have a trade relationship, they have all sorts of relationship, which is not there, obviously, in the same level with the Pakistan.
Yes.
But then as far as security, of the region is concerned, so America has been trying to engage Pakistan much more than, there was a bit of lull after, Osama bin Laden episode, But now I think there is a re-engagement with the Pakistan. That's why we saw, Pakistani, Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif visiting, he had a session with the White House. So I don't think we should read too much between what's going on between Pakistan and America, India has its own relationship in level, with Americans. So it doesn't affect directly, But obviously, as far as the fight against terrorism is concerned, now Americans have also started accepting. If you remember, a couple of weeks back, there was a leak by a CIA former, and it clearly mentioned that that Pakistan has been involved in sponsoring these terrorist organizations, in a proxy way, So the Americans do know what's going on in the region, and they want to have a different relationship with different countries as part of the American, foreign policy.
And the Americans always knew, if going by these records and that were leaked, the Americans, the administration at least, knew all this while that Pakistan has been harboring these terror camps, they've been harboring certain terror groups. But now that it's out in the open, is the US also under pressure to make its people, to assure its people that the fight against terror, with Pakistan, vis-a-vis, how things are, of course, within Pakistan at the moment. How is America also feeling? Is it feeling the pressure at the moment?
Well, you see, America has its own domestic compulsions, So if you say when 9/11 happened, the first initial information came that clearly led that some of them were Pakistani origin, people, So there is Americans do understand, what's going around when it comes to terrorism. They may not be aware about many other world issues, but when it comes to terrorism, because they have seen it, nobody would have imagined what happened to them, So I don't think the relationship with Pakistan is determined by the domestic compulsions of America.
All right. I believe Mr. Agarwal has something to say.
On the Kashmir.
Yes.
I just want to make a quick comment on Kashmir.
Yes.
The hypocrisy of the Pakistan on Kashmir and its atrocities on the POK, just released videos, has been completely exposed. And now the international community, international countries looking towards India for a more bilateral, better relations and India's newfound confidence. I think we are not dependent on multilateral relationship in the international arena, but our relations will now grow on bilateral terms. So therefore, our relations with third country will not affect our bilateral relations. This support of multiple countries is not needed for our relations, whether with China or with UK or with US. Our economic strength in itself is giving us the leverage to bargain on our terms. That is a new parameter within which the international relations will depend. And as far as Pakistan is concerned, is not that important on international. Our relations with Pakistan is become less important in our relations with other countries.
In fact, that is exactly what came out of that meeting between Nawaz Sharif and Barack Obama as well, the US saying that this is a problem that you need to solve bilaterally as well. But Mr. Bansal, just talking about the ban as well, is there, of course, a wide opinion that the Jamaat-ud-Dawa or these organizations that have been banned can come back again as different outfits, and it's just a cycle and just continues, and that is, of course, the worry.
See, the problem is, in the past, all these organizations have come under a different incarnation, different name. It has happened, and that possibility still exists. We must understand that Pakistan's security establishment still considers these outfits as a very viable tool of pursuing their foreign policy or security objectives in India. Secondly, we must understand that radicalization in Pakistan is widespread. In fact, every single attack in armed forces installation, there have been insiders who have colluded. So that shows that even the institution of armed forces in Pakistan is not immune to the virus of radicalism. Thirdly, I think the ideology of Pakistan, because of this so-called two-nation theory, they have to teach their students right from the childhood why Pakistan was created. The so-called Pakistan Studies program, the curriculum itself breeds certain amount of radicalization because it has certain selected portions which in a very, very subtle way generate certain sort of hatred against non-Muslims and things like that. And that creates, it is under that agenda that these outfits manage to attract the youth. And invariably you find that it is the adolescents who are actually recruited for their cause, and then they keep prospering and they grow in numbers. As far as US is concerned, the biggest threat to them is that the Pakistani nuclear establishment. Pakistan has a huge stockpile of processed fuel, and the possibility of this falling into the hands of any of these radical outfits cannot be totally ruled out. I'm not trying to say that it will fall totally under, but a part of it falling into the hands of these outfits cannot be ruled out, because already there are very clear-cut indications that both Daesh and Al-Qaeda are actually looking to acquire nuclear material, and the country which they are targeting to acquire that is Pakistan. And in that sort of a scenario, I think US apprehensions about Pakistan are very, very genuine, and so it wants to remain engaged with Pakistan, wants to put pressure on Pakistan. If you see, there has been a subtle change in the aid that US gives to Pakistan. In the current year, 2/3 of the aid is going to the civilian establishment, only 1/3 to the military. In the past, bulk of the aid used to be to the military. So that transformation is taking place. And I think this greater engagement with Pakistan also needs to be seen in the context that Nawaz Sharif is now again reasserting his authority. In between, there was a time when Nawaz Sharif had become extremely weak and was virtually a puppet in the hands of the army. He's now trying to reassert his authority, and probably US is trying to bolster him by engaging with him and doing those things.
All right. Finally, if I could come to you, Mrs. Uma Singh, are you hopeful that this ban is actually going to be effective in a way? Do you feel this is a first step, at least for Pakistan, on cracking down on extremism?
I would say that it's rather premature, to think that whether it is going to be effective or not. But given the past history of Pakistan using terrorism as an instrument of state policy, I don't think, because they have been nurturing terrorists, army and ISI have been nurturing the terrorists, and as Musharraf also mentioned that earlier they were our heroes and now they have become villains. And here I would like to mention that even Hillary Clinton, when she was the Secretary of State, she did mention that the US policy towards Pakistan has been flawed. And she also made comment that if you nurture snakes at your backyard, they are going to kill you. But the fact is that US-Pakistan relationship is so unique that US needs Pakistan as much as Pakistan needs US. And Pakistan is fully conscious of the fact that US needs Pakistan. And that's why you find that despite 9/11, and despite the fact that Pakistan became an ally in the war against terrorism, Pakistan has been continuing the same policy vis-a-vis India, and as far as giving patronage to the terrorists are concerned. So I don't think that, I mean, I would just like to mention here that Mr. Agarwal made a comment about Kashmir. In fact, for the last 10 years or 15 years, both US and China have categorically stated that India and Pakistan have to solve their Kashmir problem bilaterally.
Yes.
It is not now that the present government has succeeded in, pressurizing or impressing upon US that they should not meddle in Kashmir. This has been the US policy for the last 10, 15
Exactly,
years.
which is why we said, I mean,
And they
nothing
have
has
openly
really
said that India and
changed.
Pakistan
Yes.
have to solve Kashmir bilaterally.
Absolutely. I mean, by the looks of it, at least by and large, the reactions that we're getting in India is this is just mere eyewash. It's just Nawaz Sharif keeping his, part of the deal, as what he, of course, discussed with Barack Obama, and nothing really going to be changing on the ground. Of course, we are hopeful that this is, in fact, a crackdown on extremism, at least in the neighboring country, because this, of course, affects all of us directly here. But that's it, of course, on the big picture. Thanks so much for joining us. We'll be back with another topic tomorrow. Keep watching Rajya Sabha TV.